This is a very short remake of my suffrage movement video. Back then, that was a year ago, I was talking about Little Women. Now, I'm going to be talking about Gone with the Wind. So, let's get this started with right now. Gone with the Wind, suffrage movement. Now, I know the suffrage movement doesn't exactly exist within Gone with the Wind. It's mostly about the Civil War, I know. But I do realize that I've already created so many Civil War videos that it's probably about time I started recreating my suffrage movement videos. And why suffrage, you ask? Margaret Mitchell was part of the suffrage movement. Her mother was a big part of the suffrage movement. And I know she wasn't that dedicated towards it, but I think we can give a little bit towards this, don't we? So let us get this started with right now, this day. Suffrage movement. Women's suffrage in 20th century. Now, suffrage has existed for at least several hundreds of years. My suffrage movement, though, it's probably been about 100 years and a few decades, give or take a few decades, give or take a few years, and then all you get is a bunch of women trying to go ahead and getting their rights, which is sound and great because even the men agreed with the women and tried to help their wives, if those women even had wives for that matter. So, before all this, women's status quo was pretty low. As you can already know, you can think of the stereotypical housewife. The stereotypical housewife being the housewife stays at home, does all the chores and things, while the man goes off to work and make the money for pretty much literally everyone. So what happens in the end? Well, in the end, President Wilson goes ahead. Well, it's President Wilson right now because this is the 20th century. I'm mostly going to be talking about the suffrage movement in the 20th century, alright? So because of all this, the vote for women and women's rights and women's norms were starting to go ahead and get anything about all this. And so they go ahead and start doing something. Women didn't really like the protest. They were going ahead and it's quiet. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the status quo of the old women from the 19th century who were always told that you have to do like this. No tomboys are bad, that women didn't really like that. But then in the 20th century, they started coming out and they started speaking out, like protests and other stuff. They started asking for their rights. Here is a protest of President Wilson, of them criticizing President Wilson for not giving them women's rights, votes for women, etc., etc. Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty? And of course, we have to have the liberty as well too. Liberty is one of the few constitutional rights, and also it said all men are created equal. It should also be created all people are created equal. All humans should be created equally. Some went over the board and chained themselves towards these places until they got their rights, until they got their rights. So I think this was a little bit excessive. It did put cause towards them, it did put ahead some it did go ahead and put something towards their movement. It put attraction towards their movement, and even gave a little bit of a spotlight on their movement as well too. They did lots of things, such as painting these stuff and putting up these posters on there. And they protested with all these photos I got. I could probably show you pretty much all of them. And then eventually all their hard work paid off because the 19th Amendment was passed, and this gave women at least the right to vote. And now they just had to change social norms. And once they changed the social norms, you got what women have today. Independent women working by themselves, thinking that they should be alone and that they can be alone and that they don't need a man to go ahead and provide for them. They don't need anyone to provide for them. They can do this perfectly by themselves. Everything perfectly by themselves. And that's so true, except now that the birth rate is falling down, we're having a crisis of we might have underpopulation soon, or at least we won't have underpopulation, but our majority of our population will become very, very old and not workable. So, that's about it. That's the women's suffrage in a nutshell. And, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a really short remake, I know. It's not as long as my usual videos, but in the end, I hope you guys enjoyed it in the end. So, until next time, Shihan out, peace. Bye-bye. Where are you going? Until next time, Shihan out, peace. Bye-bye.